Okay, Prob and Stats, this is Mr. Neff. A quick video edit of how to create problem one. The first thing I would do is label the bottom tab, if you can see at the very bottom of the screen, problem one, because you're actually going to also create three new other sheets and maybe label them problem 2, 3, and 4. Then going back to problem one, I'll go ahead and set this up. Now I'm going to do this quickly, but I'll allow you to pause the video, obviously, and do it as you will. But all of these values that I'm putting in here can be found either from the video, or you can actually look to the tool found in the assignment. So a very quick reference to the assignment. We are looking at the project measures of spread. And in this has two files, sample and population variance project outline. And so the first thing you can look at is the goals, and I'm taking column A, B, C, and D titles from this section here. I'm using difference squared instead of square of the differences just so it fits in the space. And the second file in there is the actual worksheet file. So if you need a digital copy of that worksheet, you're more than welcome to use these values, because all you should be typing in are the data values, and then everything else should be calculated from there. So that said, once you get that in, you're going to go ahead and put the values from the first worksheet in there. And I don't have that off screen, so I'll have to pull it down here and write it in. I'm trying to keep those on the screen. Trying to keep those on the screen at the same time might be a little tricky for me at first, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. And so here we go, using the project source file from problem one. I'm just going to list the data, and I'm going to go ahead and put them down the column. I'm going to put them in the same order that they appear in the worksheet. You're more than welcome to reorder them, but if you put them in the same order, it's an easy way to keep track and make sure you have everything. The next thing I would do is I'd highlight everything. I'm going to hold down Control and press A 2 times. It's going to select everything in the sheet, and I'm going to press Center. I think that cleans things up and makes them look nice. I'm also going to resize column D, which resizes all of the columns a little bit. Now to calculate the mean, you type equals and then start with the word average. And then it pops up some suggestions, but I suggest clicking the actual function, not the one that pre-builds the entries, although that does work in this case. But get used to selecting the actual function and then highlighting for yourself what you wanted to find the average of and hitting enter. Autofill does not work in this, but there's a shortcut whereas you can add $ in front of every letter and number inside of the formula itself. If you do that, it's secret programming code for lock that value. Right? If you remember how we calculated the difference, we then took and hit equals, selected the first A2 value of 8 and pressed minus, and then selected the mean value of 6.4 in cell B2. Notice those aren't typed in, they're cell references. I'm clicking the values on the screen so that it recalls what they are. And if they change, it changes as well in the formula. The fourth column is calculated as the difference squared. So we did that by hitting equals first, clicking the cell that we want to square. And I used Shift 6 to put that caret symbol in there as an exponent. So I'm essentially taking cell C2 squared and hit enter. If you get those values calculated for the first row, then you can highlight them entirely and use the crosshairs that change as you highlight this right-hand bottom tiny box and autofill the other values. Right? This only works for the mean if you use the shortcut of the $, but again, not too bad. After that, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the project source file and use the headers from it to find out what I'm going to type in cells F2 through I believe it's F6. And so I'm using those here. I'm just going to copy and paste them. You're more than welcome to type them in, but that is where they're coming from if you're looking to calculate them on your own. And so in cell F2, I'm going to paste those values. And then I'm going to very sneakily click right align or right justification so that those are shifted to the left. I'm also going to bold them and italicize them for fun so they look fancier. And then in cells G2 through G6, I'm going to calculate those values. So remember, we have to hit equals on these. The mean is the same value from B2, so you can just click it. The rest of the values use the sum of the different squared columns. So I'm going to need to calculate that separately. And so I'll go one space below. I hit equals and it gave me the shortcut, but if it didn't, you'd start typing the word sum and click the built-in function. and then you would highlight the given values. After it's calculated as a sum, recall that the population variance is calculated by hitting equals and clicking that sum to refer to it, using the backslash key to divide, and then typing in the number of values, and in this case there are 10 values. All right, I got that by counting how many values there are on the left-hand column. After you hit enter, it successfully calculates population variance. Then I'm going to get the standard deviation by hitting equals and trying the built-in square root function, equals SQRT. When you click that function, it says, okay, you want to take the square root of what value? And then you click the number right above it. Notice the decimal precision is very high, which is fine. I'll change that in a minute. For sample variance, recall that you're going to hit equals and then click the sum as you did before. So referring back to the sum of the different squared column, but this time dividing by one less. So since it was 10, I'm going to divide by 9 and hit enter. Lastly, I'll find the standard deviation by taking the square root of the value I just found. So similar to the previous step. So equals SQRT, choosing the square root function, and then clicking the value I want to take the square root of. The last thing I would suggest is highlighting column G and using these decimal values, precision showing on the top left, the zeros and the arrows, kind of just clean that up a little bit. I will check all of these problems by picking a random data value, as you see now, and changing it to a ridiculously high number and hitting enter. And if you've done the computation successfully, the program is written so that it will automatically recalculate all those values. So that is number one in a nutshell. As you solve the rest of them, you're going to try to input that same data in different spots using the new problem 2 values, problem 3 values, etc. Just remember that you can always refer back to problem 1 by clicking on the cell that something is in and looking up at the formula bar to see how we just did it. So feel free to look at this video and then ask questions in class. Otherwise, good luck on the project.